Thank you.
Please welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Randy D. Williams, founder and president of Tally and Twine Watch Company.
I'm so honored to be here today, but before I get started, I'll turn this one off because I don't need that. Can we give a hand to all of the talent that we've seen today? All of the speakers, the musicians. One word comes to mind. I've only been in Detroit for a short period of time. One word just kept coming to my mind while I was sitting there, and that's excellence. There is such a spirit of excellence here, not only in Detroit, but really at Wayne State University. And I hope that you all understand the types of people that you have here. The true gems, they're jewels in their community. Everybody that I've met has been so sincere, loving, appreciative, and willing to help me in any way that I needed it. Don't take that for granted, because I've been a lot of places and that's not the case. And I just want to say thank you all for the hospitality. Everybody that I've met, I feel like I'm at home. I'm definitely coming back. It will not be in the winter, but I will be back. And so again, I want to say I appreciate that. I want to talk about part of Dr. King's legacy that's often overlooked. If you were like me, and if your school system was similar to ours, I grew up in rural Georgia, what you learned about Dr. King was the fact that he had a dream and he was nonviolent. And it stopped there. It wasn't until I became an adult that I sought out on my own path to learn about Dr. King, to learn about what he stood for. And I realized that Dr. King was not a weak man. Dr. King was not a passive man. In fact, he was one of the most courageous leaders that we've ever had. You know, a person who chooses restraint when they have the ability to choose violence is stronger than the person who reacts emotionally. And what I've learned about Dr. King is that his legacy is multi-layered. A child prodigy, but also someone that was not only talking about civil and social justice, but economic justice. The Poor People's Campaign, which you may have heard about, is one of the things that I think we should talk more about. And what that is saying that America has a responsibility to us to compensate us for what we've done for this country. I remember watching an interview a few years ago, and Dr. King said something that really struck me. He said, the next time we go to Washington, we're going to get our check. And the panel last night talked about that and how important it is to push lawmakers, to push those decision makers in society, to push us closer to economic justice, because we do need that portion. Well, what we're going to talk about today is, I think, three keys to economic empowerment that we can do together, that we can empower ourselves to do, that I think are nuggets from his legacy and things that I've used in my life as well. I'm from a really small town called Camilla, Georgia, and I grew up just wanting to make something out of myself. Our biggest employer, y'all can probably relate to this, was a chicken plant. So it's a chicken factory. We didn't make tires, but we made chicken. And it's just understood that when you graduate college, you go and work at the chicken plant, right? My whole childhood, from middle school to high school, was trying to avoid that chicken plant. I didn't want to accept that fate. I didn't want to be pigeonholed into doing one thing because everybody else was doing it, because that's what was expected of me. And so I started out on this entrepreneurial journey. I set up a lemonade stand. Nobody came. I went to the basketball court and I sold pages out of Slam magazine to the people playing basketball for 25 cents. And I even got suspended from school for selling candy at school as well. And through that trial and error, man, you really learn about yourself, but you also learn about people. And today we're going to talk about the human aspect of what it means to be economically empowered. And before I get started, I want to let you know how I know I'm in the right place today is when I checked into my hotel at the MGM Grand. Right after she gave me my key card, I looked down on the floor, and there was a wad of cash at my foot. Now, we were in the casino, but I didn't partake. It was only $3. But that is my note to myself to say, hey, Randy, you're in the right place at the right time. So we'll see what happens with that $3 after we leave here today. Hey, the first key, I believe, that we can learn from Dr. King's legacy about economic empowerment is collaboration. Here's a quote: "We can all get more together than we can apart. And this is the way we gain power. Power is the ability to achieve purpose. Power is the ability to effect change, and we need power." And reflecting on that statement and considering the lens of collaboration, I spoke to a business mentor of mine a few years ago. This was actually when I was first starting out with Tally & Twine. I was having lunch with him, and the first question I asked him was, what is your biggest challenge in business? And at this time, he owns 3 multi-million-dollar Chick-fil-A's. What's your biggest challenge in business? He said, without hesitation, people. And you can think about, even in your personal lives, what's your biggest relationship challenge? People, that guy you met that you probably shouldn't have gave your number to. And what is your biggest challenge at work? Most people are not unhappy because of what they do. They're unhappy because of the people that are surrounding them, that they work with, right? So I began to reflect on who was around Dr. King. Who did he confide in? Who was it that he practiced his speeches with? Who did he get ideas from? Who did he plan and strategize with? And all of these great names start coming to mind. Ralph Abernathy, Fred Shuttlesworth, Rosa Parks, Ella Baker, Coretta Scott King herself, and John Lewis. We started thinking about all these names, and somebody mentioned it earlier. I believe it was the educator, how important that inner circle is and the people that you surround yourself with. And I can only imagine what those conversations were like. Those people also became individually great contributors in their community, individual peacemakers and trendsetters in their own communities and families, and legends in their own right. So the first key to economic empowerment is collaboration. We've got to get the right people in the room and surround ourselves with the right people to make these good decisions. But also, the second part to that collaboration is group economics. Now, we can simplify this by really saying this: there's power in our dollars. So if we don't have anything else, one thing that we as African Americans do in the US is we consume. We consume. To the tune of about $1 trillion a year is our spending power. So if no law gets changed, we have the power to control what happens with our dollar. And it can be used in 2 ways. The first way, support black businesses like Tally & Twine Watch Company. Instead of choosing a big brand, you can choose a black brand. It's very simple to do. The second thing we can do that we saw illustrated through Dr. King is we can take our dollars away. So those companies who don't support us, who don't speak to us, who support unjust laws, who support political candidates that don't have our best interests, we can take our dollars away from them, and that is our power and true economic power. We can show that in force. We've seen this played out in Dr. King's life, whether it be through unionizing, sit-ins, boycotts. Somebody mentioned the Montgomery bus boycott. We saw the effectiveness of that. So that's the B portion. So the first key to economic empowerment is collaboration. The second key is competence. I'll give you a quote from Dr. King. "Intelligence plus character," as someone mentioned earlier, that is the goal of true education. Intelligence plus character. When I'm often interviewed about Tally & Twine, people ask me, well, how did you know how to make a watch? And the answer is I didn't. It's a learning process, and I'm still learning every day. And what I realize is that, especially for the students in the room, you need to understand that we live in the best time in history to start a business. We live in the information age where nothing is out of reach. No piece of information is beyond you. The veil has been torn down, and you can get any piece of information that you need to further your career and your business life. And I think we take that for granted, and we use it for things like social media, and watching, me personally, recipe videos on TikTok. But we can really use that as a tool to really open the floodgates of not only information, but also that collaboration that I spoke to about earlier. But the key is you can learn from everything that you have access to. So in my course of entrepreneurship and achieving to the status of what Tally and Twine is today, I was telling the crowd last night that I failed at business for about 10 years. So this is through trial and error, and in that moment, you not only learn about business, you learn a lot about yourself. But there is really no progress, there is no competence that will be achieved without that failure. And as I was telling a student earlier today, you won't know until you get out there and try it. You gotta get out there and try it. You've got to learn to fall, scrape your knee, get up, and do it again. One of Dr. King's biggest failures was actually 30 minutes from my hometown of Camilla, Georgia, and it was in Albany, Georgia. Some of you might not know this, but Dr. King, just as he went to Chicago, somebody mentioned earlier, went to Albany, Georgia to fight segregation, one of the most racially segregated towns in Georgia. And he was hardly able to achieve anything. You know, he left with his head hanging because the racist structure in power was so organized, the people were so apathetic that he wasn't able to get much done. But without those failures, like in Albany, Georgia, we don't get the success of the Montgomery bus boycott. We have to learn how to take those failures and synthesize that information. One of the things I also learned about Dr. King that's really important is that he was a lifelong learner and a voracious reader. He studied books on law. He studied books on social justice, philosophy, and revolutions. He learned from Gandhi the philosophy that he ultimately adopted, which was peaceful resistance. And it's through those things that he learned that he was able to synthesize and create his own philosophy on life that we know as the nonviolent movement. But we can never stop learning, because when you do that, you end the growth and development of whatever your personal civil rights fight might be. Dr. King had to also learn the law. Without understanding a law and understanding that it's unjust, you can't fight it. And by understanding the law, he was able to hold a mirror to the United States government and say, hey, look at your hypocrisy. These are the things you said you stood for, but this is what you're showing me how much we're worth. You said I'm 3/4 of a man. This is not what your Constitution says. And even though we had the right to vote, we still had to fight voter intimidation. But it's only through understanding that law that you can understand what it means to truly advance and further the purposes of what you're trying to do. There is no substitute for competence. So that's the other thing I learned from Dr. King. Never stop learning. And the third and the final key to economic empowerment is consistency. This isn't the sexiest one, all right? Most of you, in fact, the diet that you started this month, you're probably already off of it. I went to dinner with some people last night. I won't call anybody's name. I'm not going to make eye contact. But consistency is the most overlooked aspect of success because it's boring, right? All you have to do is just keep making baby steps, keep making progress. When I was writing my book, I made sure to write something every day. You know, sometimes it was a sentence, sometimes it was a paragraph, sometimes it was a page. But without that progress and that forward movement, you'll get stalled out. So consistency is often overlooked. Dr. King said it like this: human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. The tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals. Success is neither automatic nor inevitable. I'll give you a quick story about when I started Tally and Twine. My goal was to be in Macy's. And I looked at that Red Star logo every holiday, watched the parade, said, I gotta be in there. And so I tried for 3 years to get into their retail program. Applied, denied, applied, denied, applied, denied, until I realized that the true power of Tally and Twine came from my own community. So what we're gonna do is ignore the big retailer, And we're going to focus on selling to the people who want to hear our products, who want to see our products, who care that we even exist, and we're going to focus on them. So that's what we did for the next few years. And last year, guess who came calling? Not only Macy's with the purchase order, but also Nordstrom with the purchase order. Thank you. And to me, that represents the importance of keeping your head down. We've never sought out headlines. We haven't had a PR person that was trying to get us on television. We've always focused on keeping our head down, making good products, and serving our customers well. If you're in business, I'll give you a quick nugget, a jewel right now that you can use. Customer service as a whole is dead. So if your business acknowledges people in a way that they haven't been spoken to, you're already ahead of the competition. We've gotten to the point now where we don't even expect good service. So when somebody gives it to us, it's, wow, you know, it's a shock. So that's a nugget for you. Customer service is really important. Somebody mentioned the Montgomery bus boycott earlier, and the fact that it lasted a year, 382 days to be exact. But take a deeper look at that. What did it take for a full year for a group of poor people in Montgomery, Alabama to not take the bus? During this time, 70% of the bus riders were African American. So for a year, they didn't use it. So what did they do? Taxi drivers matched the fare of the bus. So the black taxi drivers drove them to work. Most of the people continued to walk to work instead of taking the bus. They carpooled. They figured out a way to do it. And they didn't get tired after month 3, 4, 5, 6. They kept going until they achieved their aims and their purposes. And that's why I say consistency is the most important aspect of success, especially economic development. I also found out that even though we hear about the I Have a Dream speech, and that's the one that they tout, Dr. King himself gave over 2,500 speeches. Most of us don't know 2,500 words. Dr. King gave over 2,500 speeches in his lifetime to all kinds of groups, and these are just the ones that we have documented. We don't know about the smaller interactions when he went into people's homes. He was consistent in what he does. And so when he gets the microphone at the March on Washington, this is not his first time speaking to an audience. It's your first time hearing it. And they say that, you know, successful people are like in an incubator. You know, it takes 10 years to make an overnight success. Well, by the time you hear about him, oh, he's an overnight success. He came out of nowhere. No, actually, this person has been doing this for quite a while. So real change is made through consistency. So to recap, first thing we need if we're going to be economically empowered is collaboration. The second thing we need for economic empowerment is competence. We've got to understand the war that we're fighting and use those tools to our advantage. And the third and final thing is consistency. All great things happen through consistency. Thank you. I should probably take this since my face is on it.